Hello, Rabbi.
Hello, Joe.
And we have a special guest with us tonight, Aaron Sulkin, Professor Emeritus, General Philosopher, raconteur, and all about man about town. And he has some interesting questions for the rabbi. And I have no doubt that it has something to do with the background of choice for the evening. It seems like a nice place. And with that, I will turn it over to Aaron.
Hello. Hello, Rabbi.
Hello, Aaron.
Hello, and thank you, Joe. So my question for the rabbi is simply this. Contrary to your background, is the world going to hell in a handbasket?
Not the world I live in. Just look at the background. and I think I'd like to focus in on some of our definitions or what we mean by, is the world a good place or a bad place? You know, depending on whether you're the windshield or the bug, that has a lot to do with how you view the universe and how you think about life. So how do you see it going? What's your standard? What's your measure?
Well, those are all excellent questions. And I think I'll begin my response in the form of an anecdote. I feel like I used to be someone who was very optimistic about the human condition. And I feel like, and also optimistic about not just my own human condition, the human condition in general, but optimistic about the kind of default morality and default benevolence of both the society that I felt like I was a part of, and I guess what I was hoping the people in that society also felt. And for some reason, I don't know if this is just a byproduct of growing up, because it seems like everyone that I know who is older than me, you know, the phrase, oh, you know, they don't make them like they used to, or man, this generation stinks, or whatever. So I don't know if what I'm feeling is just a natural thing. Like as I get older, I will begin to have this kind of disregard for anything behind me or younger than me. But I don't know. I felt a lot less likely to kind of go along with that instinct of just inherent hopeful benevolence and I guess maybe just hope.
Yeah, but you're asking, is the glass half empty or the glass half full question? You're asking that classical, and people will say that, and they'll say to me, well, how do you see, is the glass half empty or the glass half full? And I always respond by saying, I ordered ribs, where are they? Because the glass is neither half empty. That's why I asked you your perspective. You know, I'm a realist, not an optimist and not a pessimist. What's reality? What's going on around, as opposed to looking for, I don't know, some good, some bad, because one can find whatever one wants to find. Start with the thing the world is going to in a handbasket. Start with that, I'll prove it to you. Want me to prove it isn't? I'll prove it to you. So whatever you say, we can prove it really is our perspective on reality and where we're sitting that makes us judge these views. In reality, things were very different when I was your age. They weren't better, they weren't worse. They were different. Appliances were different. Oh, they lasted much longer. No, they didn't. They limped along, used more electricity, and the butter spoiled. But the refrigerator lasted for 100 years. So depending on what you want it to be, we can really demonstrate. Look at what we're doing right now. You know, I was a big Dick Tracy fan, and I waited and got my Apple Watch. I think it's the 4. I didn't get the first came out. This is Dick Tracy's watch. I always wanted that as a kid. How could you say things were better? I now have, and I'm living the life of the Jetsons. I mean, this is what they used to do in the Jetsons. School was virtual. So if I would like us to start with where you are, Aaron, because that'll tell you if the world is human beings are human beings. And so where are you and what's changed that have you become a realist, or have you gone over to the dark side?
I think based on what you just said, it sounded like your definition of better is entirely predicated on the efficiency of stuff. My watch is better, my fridge is colder. And by that definition, surely the world is not going to hell in a handbasket. I guess my question is more like, the phrasing I'm about to use appalls me. So I apologize on my own behalf. In my day-to-day, I see a lot of sad children. In my day-to-day, I see a lot of people who struggle to communicate their feelings. I see people who struggle to communicate in general. I see people who are angry and sad at a rate that seems to suggest that it's trending upwards, not downwards, or not that we're this is the same as it's always been. We're just more aware of it, but like something seems to be getting worse in the way that people feel about themselves in the world. And I think that your answer about having to do with this kind of like consumer capitalist, nothing wrong with those things. These are just the words I'm using. Definition of the stuff is better, therefore the world is better. I think that's definitely a way of looking at it. But I guess my question is: Are people better, or are people getting worse?
Sure. I'm a rabbi, so let's be a rabbi. Cain saw that his brother offered a better sacrifice. He killed him. Noah was the most righteous man in his generation. God couldn't find any good people. Noah, and all the things he did, was a kumilemel, a schnook, and shlemiel or shlemazel, whatever word you want to use. But the scripture says he was the most righteous in his generation. It doesn't say he was a good person. King David was up on the roof, which people did in Jerusalem, the cool of the evening. There were actually palm trees planted on the roof, and you went up there and he looked over and he noticed this gorgeous woman naked sunbathing. And he said, "Who is she?" And so King David found out she was married to his most loyal general. So King David said, "This is terrific. I'll send him on a suicide mission and then I'll marry her." So we can, if one wants to look at behavior and people, Abraham, he was willing to sacrifice your own kid. Well, if I was your father, I probably wouldn't have stopped, but that's different, Aaron. We're not talking about that. But Isaac, Jacob is old, he's blind. And so what does the kid do? Tricks him out of his twin, out of his birthright. So I think one of the neat things about the scriptures, Hebrew, Greek, Old and New, the Quran, Native American, Aboriginal, the beauty is that we get to see people through thousands of years. And we get to see that human nature has not changed very much. And we have technologies. Some centuries we seem to do better. And some periods of some places we seem to do better. But the beauty of all our sacred literature is human beings go through and act in ways that seem like, you want to read sermons throughout history. Every one I've ever read, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. Every generation, every sermon, every preacher. Look at the way the kids behave. Look at what they're doing. Look at this, look at that. And we pull back and say, what we need to focus on is how can we help each other be better as human beings? It's not that things are getting worse or getting better. That's a fruitless task. Rather, what you're pointing out, if we have students who are struggling, how can we help them with their struggle? But they're not unique. Read Dickens. And, childhood there's no such thing as being a childhood. That was invented. If you look at the England of Dickens, I don't want to be a child. There was no childhood. It was a terrible time. And if you look at different periods and we can learn from them, I think that's worth focusing on. I don't think we've learned anything. I think what we're doing is repeating and repeating without taking the lesson. And then it appears that things might be getting worse or disintegrating.
Well, as the director, I feel like I should point out and observe and ask at the same time your choice of background and waves, how the water goes up, the water comes down, the water goes in, the water goes out. I mean, isn't that a metaphor for life? That sometimes we're riding high and sometimes we're riding low. Sometimes we're surfing along and sometimes we're crashing against the rocks.
Sometimes you're the windshield and sometimes you're the bug. But but that's really neat, Joe, because you're the one that suggested this background. So I'm glad that you pointed out to everyone that the background's a great metaphor, as if it was you made a good decision, Joe. Joe's observation is accurate. The waves may change in height. It flows, it comes and goes, yet it's still there. And the water isn't diminished. Though we're talking about sea levels rising, but that's that's something else. It's still the same amount of water or water vapor. It's just in a different state. So that I'm pointing that out. Human beings are human beings.
And it comes back to the whole issue: is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? Yes, our refrigerators might work better, but our oceans are filling up with plastic bags. The temperature is rising, but we're more aware of CO2 emissions. And we're trying to balance that, which in one way or another, isn't all of humanity always been trying to do that, make things a little bit better, trying to avoid things that are making it worse? And has there ever been anybody trying to make the world worse?
There's no one historically, because people wanted to live on the land and wanted to have animals to hunt. And so wherever we go on the planet, when we look at the history of the indigenous, we look at the history of anyone, it was, how can I sustain what I have? And there were always those individuals that wanted to destroy it. And I think that's also a neat lesson from all religions, because there have always been people out there like Samson who will pull the temple down on their own head. And you go, we have an expression in Yiddish, was ist das Chochma? What is the wisdom in plastic bags and polluting the ocean, in chopping down the trees that make oxygen? What is the wisdom in that? And I think you kind of have to, let's go back then to, what is your touchstone? What do you, when you look out the window and you see, and this also reminded me of police and fire. Remember, my career has been in psychiatry, hospice, and no one, and don't have to invite me to your birthday because I'm not asking for it, but it's very rare that I'm called to celebrate. When my phone rings, when I get an email, when I get a call, unless it's from Joe, it's always, and I've learned I have to stop myself and say, my experience has put me in a universe of death and illness and people having problems dealing to the point of suicide or hurting others. Remember, I was a chaplain with a fire company. You don't call the chaplain. Of course, we had birthdays in the firehouse, but you don't call me out. What I used to say to people, well, what'd you do to the fire now? I said, well, if you're in your car and you have an accident and you look out your window, I'm going to be the last person you want to see, and I'm going to be the last person you will ever see, because that's when they call me over. When they're extricating, when things are working, then I may be in an ambulance or at the side. But in an emergent situation, if your house is on fire, Aaron, and you see me out the window, I'm the last person you want to see, and I will be the last person you will see. So I have to stop myself and say, that's not the world.
But let us give our young friend some hope, because a life of misery and despair is usually only reserved for chaplains and high school English teachers.
Don't take that from me, Joe. Let me hold on to my life of misery and despair, please. Well, here, and this might be very, very selfish and very maybe like, I don't know, prejudiced against anything, like an extreme form of ageism, but like, I guess as the inheritor of all that came before me, I am the closest to the asymptote of complete and total societal collapse. So I get that people, every generation is going to think that the world is ending because there's nothing in front of them. There's only things behind them. And I get that fear. But also at the same time, like I can see, I am scared. Like I do feel like I'm a rational thinking, educated person. I understand that there are, that the glass is half full and the glass is half empty. And I do understand the relationship, but when I do look out my window, my very privileged window, I'm still terrified by what I see. And that is a world in which you could blow it up at any time on
Aaron,
accident.
what I'm saying to you about being a chaplain and what I do with myself is, which way do you look? If you want to look at the world as miserable, you're going to see it. If you want to see that there's hope, you're going to see it. You have to sit down and say, I made choices in my career, so I realize this is what I will be exposed to. Knowing that, I then say to myself, but that's not the world. That's my experience in the world. But if I go to the park, if I go to a playground, if I go to Disney World, if I start going to the theater, if I start looking at art or go to the museums, I go, this is a wonderful world. And so I can choose what mood I want to be in. And one can choose to be unhappy and depressed. And I'm retired now. However, if you would like, I can help take you to places that'll make you really unhappy and depressed, and I'll take your shoelaces away. I'll take your belt away, because I wouldn't want you to do anything. But that's the point. If we look at heroes, biblical, Quran, indigenous people, none of them were perfect. They all were flawed. And we can focus on their flaws and say, oh, it's a rotten person. Or you can say, let me look back at their life and how did they conduct it and they were human. And not to focus on a good, don't be a Pollyanna. Look, if there is a barn full of horse shit, I'm not going to go in and look for the horse based on the fact that there may be some horse manure in it. I want to see the horse, but that's me. My sister of blessed memory would go right in because she would say, if I can smell horse manure, there must be a horse inside. And same building, same thing. So it depends on where we want to look. If you want to be miserable and unhappy, I'll help you. I'll be glad to show you and give you the examples.
No, you're supposed to do the opposite. And on that note, I'm not going to put any pressure on you, Rabbi, but you're on deck. So I'm going to ask our guest, Aaron, what would give you hope in this moment of pessimism and despair?
Do you want me to answer it while he's thinking? Should I give him a chance? Do you want me to talk while you're thinking, Aaron, or are you ready?
No, I'm gonna need to phone a friend here while I think. So please.
Well, I can answer Joe's question. A good IPA and a rack of ribs, and my faith in humanity is renewed. Sitting on the beach or sitting on the deck. That's all I need.
Well, is that it? Is it that why we take vacations? Is that why we indulge in creature comforts? Because it helps us set aside the struggle for a while and agree with ourselves internally to take it up again?
Well, first of all, I would say that there's a difference between pleasure and hope. And an IPA and a rack of ribs on the beach would certainly give me pleasure. But I don't know if that would give me hope. It's a tough question. As somebody who kind of thinks about like the immoral imperatives that we all have, or maybe we don't have, and sort of things. I guess I'm caught in this loop, and this is probably my own neuroses, but this loop of thinking that like any sort of maybe evil in this world, any human being has a moral imperative to kind of address it. And I don't know if that's true or not, but for some reason I feel like, I mean, in a world where we have all these tools at our disposal, including the Future Watch and including all of our fancy stuff we get to use right now to have this conversation, I don't know if what gives me anxiety or what fills me with fear is seeing that as our capacity to do good has increased, our inclination to do good has not matched it, maybe, or maybe it has and I'm not seeing that. But maybe what would give me hope is if I just maybe turn my phone off.
Viewers, will Aaron be saved? Will the rabbi be able to come up with an answer to address all these issues? Tune in next week or next Wednesday, or I don't know where we are in the cycle yet, but it'll be the next episode. And find out along with the rest of us, can the rabbi do it? Thank you, Rabbi, and I hope you've been writing all this down.
I have, and I'm ready for our next show. Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Joe.